I know, just based off the title, this sounds like it's gonna be another video where I complain about the way the manga has been going for engagement bait, but that's not what I'm here to do. Instead, I want to take a holistic, hopefully unbiased, and maybe even optimistic view of what the series has been doing for the past couple of months and make my predictions into where it can go in the near future to have the best possible ending. So, let's do that. Now, in order to look at where I want the series to go, we have to address the elephant in the room being the state of the manga currently. Depending on who you ask, you'll hear that the manga has fallen off. People are definitely talking about the manga less, and the people that are talking about it certainly have a whole lot of complaining to do. A lot of modern discourse on the manga centers around wasted or uninteresting characters, mistakes with how other characters have been handled, and the general lack of tension people might feel in the series. I obviously have been a proponent of some, if not all, of these claims, but I'm here to at least provide some context for them. First off, the idea that the manga has fallen off or had less popularity recently is at least a little true, but not entirely for the reasons people think. Yes, the quality of the manga itself plays a factor, but we also have to account for the fact that Core 2 of the anime actually did pretty well, especially compared to Core 1. This naturally leads to a spike in popularity, and so what we're feeling now, I think, at least in part, is due to the residual hype from the anime finally dying down. Yes, the anime actually ended months ago, but discourse about the anime doesn't immediately stop when it ends. We've just reached the point where fans that were introduced to the series through the anime stopped being as apparent. Another factor is the other anime/series that have been popping off. Kagurabachi, the new JJK manga, Chainsaw Man, the final season of MHA, these are all series that exist within the realm of Sakamoto Days, and at least for Kagurabachi and JJK, share a decent portion of their fan base as well. These two series have been doing incredibly, so it makes sense that when Sakamoto Days hits a slower portion in its manga, the fans will naturally pay attention to the other series they follow, especially if those other series are doing really well. All of this is to say that I don't think Sakamoto Days has fallen off to the extent that people are claiming, and not entirely for the reasons that people are claiming. Yes, the state of the manga itself may make the weekly releases less exciting to read, but if you just look at the Manga Plus app, you'll see that Sakamoto Days is consistently in the top 10 most read and actually has moved up. As far as I know, Sakamoto Days was usually around that 8 to 9 spot, but as of the time of writing, it's at number 6. So evidently, the series is still being read and even being read by more people. It's just that the overwhelming discourse on the series typically expected from a main manga of Weekly Shonen Jump doesn't exist, and I think there are valid reasons for that as well. First, let's take a look at the discourse on the manga a few months ago. When I put out my video on Sakamoto Days having no stakes, I would argue that that was essentially the peak of the issue. It was right around when Shin was fighting Takazuki, and like a week after the video released, we got the tunnel effect, which sparked a bunch of memes that even spread into other fandoms. Unfortunately for the series, things just kept following the same formulaic pattern from there. We had already had 2 fake-out fights with the post-prison order jumping, and then Shishiba, Osaragi, and Kamihate versus the New Order, so seeing the tunnel effect and then Shin and Sakamoto versus the New Order was just repetitive. It was ultimately the same issues being regurgitated fight after fight, so talk surrounding the series just got stale. And then after this, Suzuki introduced the 5 new villains and immediately gave us fights with them, so again, discourse on the series became repetitive and centered on the same issues. We effectively entered something like the Sukuna cycle from JJK, except the Sukuna cycle had cooler moments and better characters. All of this ended up making the weekly releases blend together so much so that the chapters weren't particularly memorable, at least not when compared to the chapters from earlier arcs, and all that was left was the same complaints from the same people. Now, let's flash forward to the present. How are things looking? Well, the good news is that we're moving into more exciting territory for fights and characters. I know I was a hater on the Sayanoji twins in my previous videos, and I still partly stand by that sentiment, but Kippei at the very least has been pretty cool in his fight. I'm glad the Seba brothers are having their development and dynamics shown off, as I feel that that's one of the more underrated aspects of the story, and Amane's mere presence makes Yotsumura's arrival feel inevitable, which is also pretty cool. Additionally, Suzuki seems to have mostly broken out of his version of the Sukuna cycle by having Gozu, Tanabata, and Torres all attack the van at the same time, instead of just drip feeding us fights with them all individually. While I think the community is generally wary of group fights at this point, the start to this one has at least been pretty explosive, and it's a chance to see Kandaka and Tanabata actually do something, so this is a major step in the right direction. It's also entirely possible that this fight breaks into separate 1v1s, which would also be really cool to see. So, has Sakamoto Days lost its hype and aura? I'll be the first to admit that that title and video concept was largely reactionary and definitely really engagement baity, but I still stand by a lot of the points I made in that video. While the past few chapters have been ramping up in excitement, I'm not entirely sold on the idea that Sakamoto Days is back and Suzuki is just putting out peak after peak on a weekly basis. I do see things trending in a more positive direction, but there is still work to be done before we reach peak Sakamoto Days again, which is what I want to discuss in the next section of this video. So, for as much complaining as I do, I don't really put up many suggestions for how to make the series better. Hopefully though, I changed that here. So, what do I want to do to make the series better? Well, I think Suzuki is building up to it, I just don't want him to take too long. What I'm referring to is the climatic moment when all the characters we care about are actually in the thick of things and fighting. Introducing Shishiba and Osaragi to the recent fight has been a really good choice. Suzuki got all of the fodder out of the way and is now bringing things back to our main cast, which is good. What I'm worried is that things will drag on for too long and the fans will get disinterested. Much like how the Sukuna cycle grew tiring week after week, constantly stringing us along with these fights starting and stopping can do the same. So what I'm hoping for are actual conclusive fights. Better yet, conclusive 1v1s. I don't want any of the participants to run away because they're too important to die just yet, or for the fights to be interrupted. Ideally, we get some actual losses for the main protagonists. I know this will hurt a lot of people, but Kandaka might have to go. Likewise, Siba might also have to go. Hopefully though, Tanabata and Gozu get to prove that they actually deserve a spot in the story instead of losing in their first real extended fight. Additionally, I want to see Shin actually on the back foot. Assuming Kandaka loses and Shin is just like stuck fighting Gozu, Tanabata, and Torres with maybe the help of Shishiba and Osaragi, I want to see him actually be pushed to the brink. Obviously, Shin won't die here, so I'm okay with him running away, but I don't want to see anyone else saving him last second. Shin needs to be able to survive dire situations out of his own ingenuity and not out of plot convenience. After this, I like to get back to Nagumo vs. Oki, and then finally the long-awaited Sakamoto awakening where he shows up and turns the tide. The villains need to be able to actually prove themselves as a threat before the conclusion of the story. In between all of this, there would be character interactions, likely between Natsuki and Mafuyu, assuming one of them dies, Shin and Kandaka, assuming Kandaka dies, between Yotsumura and Amane, since we've been waiting for that for like 3 years now. Now, assuming Nagumo beats Oki, I do want to see him interact with Azuki and Rion before he either loses or dies, and then Sakamoto and maybe Shin come in to wrap up things for the final fight. But these are just my thoughts, let me know if you hate them.